Sebastian here again, and 'tis the season. So we have a great pumpkin lesson for you to do. It's super easy and fun, and they look fantastic. So I have a short presentation to tell you a little bit about pumpkins, how they grow, and a few interesting facts about them, and then you're gonna do the lesson with me. Stay tuned to the end. I have a super silly joke to tell you about pumpkins. So without further ado, let's learn about some pumpkins today. Today's presentation is on pumpkins. Tis the season for these pumpkins, and if you get a chance to visit a pumpkin patch, that would be a fun thing to do. We're going to be doing a perspective lesson, and your objectives are, number one, name the 6 stages of the pumpkin growth cycle. Got to get a little science in there when we can. You'd be surprised how many students don't know how food is grown and is put in front of them on the table. I really feel like this is a lost art that everyone needs to know about. Number 2, name one interesting fact about pumpkins. Number 3, define what perspective is. And then we're going to be creating our perspective artwork. All right, on to our next slide. So this is going to show real quickly the whole growth cycle that you'll see of pumpkins. So it all starts with seeds. Yes, these are the seeds that are in your pumpkins when you make jack-o'-lanterns. And you can see this person is planting the seed in some soil. Next, a sprout will grow from that seed. And then a vine grows from the sprout, and they can get very, very long, yards and yards and yards long. The vine will grow a yellow flower. And once that is fertilized by a bee getting some honey and pollen, then the flower petals will fall off and a pumpkin will grow in its place. So it does turn green when they're not ripe. And once you allow it to ripen, it turns that beautiful orange color that we all love. Now here's a few interesting facts for you. The word pumpkin showed up for the very first time in the fairy tale Cinderella. And we're not talking about the movie Cinderella. We're talking about that old fairy tale, Grimm's fairy tales that's been handed down over many generations. And you can remember from the movie, if you've seen it, how the fairy godmother turns that pumpkin into a wonderful carriage for Cinderella to travel around on. Pumpkins are grown on every continent except Antarctica. So even though this is a rectangular flat map, not as good as a globe, the continent that's down on the South Pole here, that is the one where they do not grow, but they grow everywhere else. But what grows there? Well, penguins grow up there, for example. The world's heaviest pumpkin weighed over 2,600 pounds. In fact, 2,624 pounds to be exact, and it was grown in Germany in 2016. The largest pumpkin pie ever baked weighed almost 3,700 pounds. Pumpkin pie was originated in the colonies, just not as we know it today. Colonists would cut the tops off of pumpkins, remove the seeds, fill the pumpkins with milk, spices, and honey, and then bake them in some hot ashes from a fire. Each pumpkin has about 500 seeds. They take between 90 and 120 days to grow, and it's always recommended to plant them between May and June. The flowers that grow on the pumpkin are edible. In fact, the entire pumpkin itself is edible, including the rind. Not sure how much nutrients you're going to get from it, but you can eat it and digest it. Pumpkins are technically fruits. More specifically, they're a winter squash, which includes cucumbers and melons. But because they're savory, many people just call them vegetables anyway. All right, so now we're going to be doing this perspective lesson with Mrs. Sebastian. So perspective is the way that you see something. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell what you're looking at. Sometimes it can be how you perceive something to happen. Like if someone called out your name, you might think they meant it in a great way, or maybe you think they might be upset with you. But we're going to be talking about the art way, and that's literally how you see something. So when you're looking at this picture, can you tell what it's a picture of? Well, I've played a little joke on you because this is an extreme close-up of something, seeds in a pepper. Can you tell me what this is a picture of? I know it's hard. It's something green. I'll give you a hint. It's food. It's a lime slice. Looked very closely at all those wonderful little pockets of fluid that you can find inside of citrus fruit. We got one more. Can you tell what this is? Well, if you guessed it was the top of a pumpkin, you'd be right. Normally, we don't look at the top of a pumpkin so much. It's normally the side we look at. Our pictures today are going to celebrate this top view. A very famous American artist, Georgia O'Keefe, and she is famous for doing these up-close images of things. Let's go ahead and let's look at one of her artworks. So here is one of her pictures. Can you guess what it's an up-close image of? If you guessed an orchid, you would be correct. So she does amazing flower up-close images, as well as things of the desert you might find, including hills, or even skulls of cattle that may have passed that she finds. And she is very famous for doing this. So bravo to her. An amazing way of looking at art in a new way. All right, things that you'll need for this lesson include a piece of paper. I like a square for my paper. You'll need a pencil and a Sharpie. If you have paints, you can use those with a brush and some water. If you don't, you can do this with some water and a brush and markers. I'll kind of show you both of those techniques. If you happen to have something like oil pastels at home, you can actually use a Q-tip and some oil, and those blend really nice to make new colors if you color first with those. And of course, you can use chalk pastels too. All right, on to our project. So our first step for drawing our pumpkin is we need to work on a stem. So I kind of like to start near the middle. You don't have to be completely in the middle. A little off center is nice too. And I'm just going to kind of do something that looks like a star. But I'm not going to do the top part because that's going to be the stem. And my stem almost looks like the top of a witch's hat or a crescent moon. And then from that, I'm just going to add a few little curlicues. That makes it have a lot of interest in your picture. This would have been the part, of course, attached to the vine. Next, from this little star shape in the middle, I am going to bring curved lines down and around. Now, this one is curved and this one is curved, but now I'm on this side of the paper, I'm going to curve it this way. So if you ever get to a spot where you're thinking, I don't know if I need to, if it's on this side of the paper, I probably need to start turning those so they're like this. Do I want to put one more here? I can always take it out if I want to, since I'm drawing lightly with my pencil. I think this looks pretty good. I can also add a few lines in the middle here of my stem if I want. And you can add those, make them longer or shorter as you'd like. Then our next step is going to be using our Sharpie and going over all of our lines. Okay, for our next step. So I really want to get some brown in with these black lines. So I'm actually going to use the side of my marker's tip, and I'm going to put some brown on either side of that line. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that for all those lines. This is going to help create value or shading in our picture. That's going to give it more of that pumpkin kind of rounded form as we work through this process. Now on the stem part, I'm just going to kind of go over these lines on the inside And you'll see why in a moment while I'm doing this. And then I'm also going to outline those lines too. Okay, I'm gonna leave that stem. I think I'm just gonna leave it with the black Sharpie for now. Our next step is that if you have paints, you can go into this and start working with the oranges and the yellows in the picture. It's nice to have the brown already in there with marker, but if you wanted to paint that in with brown too, you could have done that. But let me just show you one section with paint, and then I'll show you how the marker will work. So I'm gonna add a little bit of, oh look, did you see that? The orange paint is mixing with the brown paint a little bit, and they've created this kind of darker orange hue. And that's okay, because that also adds a little bit to the pumpkin color for sure. So you can see I've got all this in, and I'm just gonna I'm rinsing my brush every time to make sure it stays nice and clean before I go into my color here. So I'm just gonna put a thin layer of orange in the middle. You know, and if at any point you feel like you need a paper towel to kind of blot it a little bit, or maybe I'm just gonna push this more into this brown area, I can do that. And then in the middle, rinse my brush. Now I'm going into the yellow. I'm gonna put some yellow here in the middle. So I'm gonna just go in there. And again, if you feel like there is too much paint and you're like, oh, I can't see my yellow when I paint into it, you might take a little bit of a paper towel like this and just kind of clean some of that. Then rinse your brush and go back into the yellow, and you'll probably have some nice highlight in there. What's nice with watercolors is that they're usually pretty scrubbable. If you make a mistake, you can just kind of clean them out with water and a paper towel a lot of the time. If I feel like I need a little more orange in here, hey, get that orange back in there for sure. Now, if I'm doing this, I would do this with the whole pumpkin except for the stem. Because we've used marker for that, look what happens when I go to the stem. You can see just by adding water, it spread that out. And that's the technique that we're gonna use if you don't have paints and you only have markers now. So I'm gonna show you how that would work. So I've already got my brown out. So now I'm gonna just take orange, and I'm gonna do some orange here, and some orange over here. Get yourself a lot. It spreads really nice when you do that. And then you can take the yellow, get that in there. And now you can take your brush with just some water, and even if you didn't have your brush, you might be able to do this with a finger too, with a little bit of water. You can kind of rub those together. What's nice with the brush is that first of all, the paper's peeling here, not a big deal, but it holds more water for you, and then you're not going to get that rubbing where the paper's going to peel off. And so you can see here, I'm just sort of going back in, and I'm adding water to that marker, and you can see how it's filling that in now. Yeah. Hit that brown, mix it with that orange again. And the highlight on this is really nice. So you can do either technique to finish it off. I might do a variety just to kind of get through here, and then we'll see you on the other end. Try to keep your stroke work following inside of those curves. you probably don't want to go against it. You want to keep following those lines as you paint. Now, I do want to say that when this is dry, if you feel like you need to get more color into the picture, like I might decide I need more yellow in here. If you don't have paints, but you only have markers, then let it dry and then work more yellow into it, and then you can reapply the water and it'll get more bright for you. So you can see here that I have a very interesting effect going on here where the paint was wet next to wet, and it kind of snaked out here from the marker line. And that is a really cool effect. I love that. I'm gonna leave that alone. You know, having those unusual anomalies occur while you're painting really brings a very special touch to your picture. And you should be proud of when those happy little accidents happen. I certainly am.
Oh, hi students. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I definitely have enjoyed making it. And don't they just look gorgeous when they're done? For sure. All right, for your super silly joke, what do you get when you divide a pumpkin circumference by its diameter? Well, you get pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, the mathematical term when you divide a circle by circumference by its diameter. Oh, anyway, so remember, as always, give somebody a hug today. They deserve it, even if it's you. And make sure you always put on that great smile and positive attitude. So important these days. And remember to always keep on making great art.